All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're looking at something most of us have in our fridge, cow's milk. But we're going to look at it from a really fascinating scientific angle. Is it just a simple source of calcium, or is it actually sending our bodies a powerful message? A message that maybe was only ever meant for a newborn calf. We're going to unpack the science behind that very idea. So, the whole idea we're exploring today is really summed up right here. It's suggesting we should think of milk less like a regular drink and more like a biological program. A program that's designed to send one very specific message: grow and grow fast. And that message gets delivered by activating a really powerful switch inside our cells. So, what is this master switch? Well, it's a protein called mTORC1. The easiest way to think about it is like the general contractor for building and expanding every single cell in your body. What's so amazing about mTORC1 is just how fundamental it is. I mean, this is an ancient system that you can find in pretty much all complex life. When there are lots of nutrients available, mTORC1 flips on, telling the cell, hey, let's grow, let's build. But when nutrients are scarce, it flips off. And that's when a super important cleanup and recycling process called autophagy kicks in. The crucial thing to remember here is that what we eat directly controls this powerful switch. Now, according to the research we're looking at, cow's milk isn't just gently nudging this switch, it's hitting it with everything it's got. And it does this using 5 distinct and really powerful molecular signals that all point right at mTOC1. This multi-part attack is what makes the signal so incredibly strong. You've got growth factors, a huge rush of specific amino acids, pure energy from fats and sugar, and then, and this is the really interesting one, tiny genetic messengers. All together, they create this powerful coordinated command to just grow. Let's break down a couple of the most important ones. First up are the growth factors. The source explains that it's not just about the IGF-1 that's already in the milk. What's even more important is that the specific amino acids in milk proteins tell our own liver to start pumping out more IGF-1. And higher levels of IGF-1 in the blood have been linked in some studies to a higher risk for certain conditions like premenopausal breast cancer. Next up, you've got the amino acids themselves. Milk, and especially something like whey protein, gives you this incredibly fast and powerful dose of BCAAs like leucine. See, our cells have these sensors that are specifically looking for leucine, and when they detect it, it's a direct green light for mTRC1 to hit the gas on cell growth and protein build. Okay, this might be the most mind-bending part of the whole hypothesis. Milk contains these tiny little packages called exosomes, and they carry genetic instructions in the form of microRNAs. Now get this. The research suggests that these microRNAs from the cow can actually survive pasteurization, survive our digestion, get into our bloodstream, and then act kind of like a piece of computer code that disables some of our body's own natural safety brakes on that mTOC1 growth pathway. So, what happens when a system that's designed for the crazy fast growth of a newborn is just kept switched on day after day for an entire lifetime? Well, this is the central question the research really digs into, and it proposes a whole range of potential effects from birth all the way to old age. The paper lays out this whole timeline of potential impacts. It suggests that this constant mTORC1 activation starts even in the womb, continues through childhood with faster growth and things like acne, and then in adulthood, it's correlated with a higher risk for what the authors call diseases of civilization. Conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers that are way more common in Western society. For example, the authors point to studies that found a clear dose-dependent link between how much milk people drank and their risk of prostate cancer, a disease where we know the IGF-1 and mTORC1 pathways are major players in tumor growth. And it's a similar story for breast cancer. The research points to a connection between high milk intake and an increased risk. This ties right back to what we said earlier about milk stimulating higher levels of that circulating IGF-1, which is a known growth factor for breast tissue. This hypothesis also stretches to type 2 diabetes. The thinking here is that constantly having mTRC1 switch to on in the insulin-producing beta cells of the pancreas could, over a long time, just lead to them getting exhausted and eventually stop working properly. And finally, as we get older, the theories suggest a possible link to neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's. Remember how mTORC1 turns that cellular cleanup process off? Well, the idea is that by always keeping mTORC1 on, we might be preventing our brain cells from clearing out damaged proteins, which can then just build up and become toxic. But this is where the story gets really interesting. The research makes a huge distinction here. Not all dairy is created equal. Apparently, there's a world of difference between fresh pasteurized milk and its fermented cousins, like yogurt and cheese. So, the fermentation process, it just completely changes the game. The bacteria get to work, they eat up the milk sugar, they alter the amino acids, and this is the really important part. They seem to just degrade those bioactive microRNAs we were talking about. In essence, fermentation basically dismantles the entire activation kit for mTORC1 that is preserved in pasteurized milk. And this theory seems to be backed up by some pretty compelling real-world data. The source brings up these large Swedish studies that saw a dose-dependent increase in all-cause mortality for people who drank a lot of pasteurized milk. But in total contrast, the same studies found no increased risk at all for people consuming fermented milk products like yogurt. So let's just quickly recap the main argument from this research. First, milk is a powerful growth signaling system, not just food. Second, all its different parts work together to slam the on button for our body's master growth switch, mTORC1. Third, the central idea is that keeping this switch on for our whole lives might be connected to a lot of modern diseases. And finally, the ancient process of fermentation seems to basically neutralize this whole signal. This really leaves us with a provocative final thought. The research presents this compelling story of a biological mismatch. A powerful, ancient program designed for rapid infant growth that's now being run nonstop throughout our modern adult lives. What all this ultimately means for how we think about nutrition, well, that's a question science is still working hard to answer. Thanks for tuning in.